wonderful perversity. Film Independent has put together a panel of directors here that have absolutely nothing in common, except that all of them, I think, are younger than I am, and everyone has made a movie considerably better than most of us could ever hope to in this life. Shireen Davis made a first feature about immigrants after threading her way through filmmaking labs and learning how to make movies at Columbia University. Michael Hoffman just made an umpteenth feature, this time about a cranky old man and his wife, after working with at least 16 different distributors, 8 of which no longer exist, unless you might want to be generous and call MGM a going concern. And James Gray started making movies when independent film was all about scammers scamming scammers, as long as they did it with wit and style, and he suddenly popped up with a very complicated love story set in the dry cleaning business. The question becomes, what can we learn from such people? And I think they're the ones who ultimately will answer that. I would love to start, though, with the simplest and most existential of questions for all of them, and that is, why did you make this movie? And James, I hope it wasn't because you had coupons.
Somebody once asked Stanley Kubrick that question, and since he's about 100,000 times more brilliant than I am, I'm going to quote him. He said, I can't answer that, he said, in his Bronx accent. He said, it's a little bit like asking you why you married your wife. She's good looking and has a lovely figure, but there are a lot of women that have lovely figures and nice faces, and I can't answer that. Just, you know, it's a weird chemical thing. And I guess the only way I can put it is you try to make films as personal as you can. And I was trying to make another picture, and for a little light reading, I pulled Dostoevsky off the shelf. And I read a novella he wrote called White Nights. Well, I had read it a long time ago, but anyway, there's something struck me about it, which was that it treated love as a kind of an issue for serious discourse, not as a joke. So I was just, I was interested in trying something like that. It's a very difficult question you ask, because there's something that's almost unknowable about why you pursue what you pursue anyway. I mean, obsession is not rational, right? So you become, if you want to make these kind of movies, you have to be obsessed. So it's not a rational thing. There's nobody in a costume, you know, spacesuit running around. I mean, not that I have anything against superhero movies. Some of them can be very entertaining, but they don't require the same commitment to get them made. They just don't.
Shireen, the same answer? Could you have made any other movie?
No, I think my answer is a little more straightforward. I mean, for me, it's actually very similar in that, you know, I made this movie for a very personal reason, and I think, you know, and in watching the movie, I think of myself. I see my 14-year-old self feeling very out of place in a small town in Ohio, and feeling incredibly misunderstood. And you know, my family in this small town went through a lot of the things that the family in the movie goes through, just in, you know, being treated as outsiders and some of the discrimination, and it was that time in my life that really opened my eyes to the fact that, you know, simply as an Arab American, our stories weren't being told, and, you know, so it's a much simpler answer, but it's well, no, it's not better. It's just, it's a first film, and so it's very much. It's very much based on my family's experience in this small town in Ohio. It's inspired by my family, and it came from the need to tell our story, to tell the story of what happened during the first Gulf War, when, you know, we were ostracized, and my dad, who's a doctor, lost a lot of his patients, and the Secret Service visited my high school because of a rumor that my sister threatened to kill the president. So it was, we got death threats on a daily basis. It was that kind of. Just realizing how absurd people's behavior could become, and, you know, when they were being fed fear through the media, and that was, you know, that's why I made the movie.
And Michael, you've worked across the board and had some very, very different pictures. Why this?
When you first asked the question, I had an answer, and maybe I'll give it. But then I got these answers would seem way more interesting, and maybe that's part of the key, because I think, I mean, growing up in this little tiny town in Idaho, which is a very different kind of experience, because I think your experience is really there, like, you're so far from the center of the world that you're not certain that there are any stories that you'd have that would be worth telling. And it took a long, and I think there's some part of me that looked to literature and looked outside myself for sort of surrogates or ways to tell stories. I think I was always, really drawn to things that weren't what I was about, or rather I found what I was about in kind of indirect ways. And this movie was really an example of that. I read the book in 1990 when it first came out, and I didn't see what the movie was at all. I went and read a couple of Tolstoy biographies and felt better about myself. But then I read it again, like 14 years later, after I'd been married for 12 years, and I saw exactly what I wanted to make a movie about. And I found a way to make a movie about my wife is here somewhere, I think, and I will say, I've said it before, she refers to it as art imitates wife. I refer to it as a film about the tragic comedy of marriage. But that's, I think that I was, somehow working stuff out about our relationship and about my feelings about the difficulty of living with love and the impossibility of living without love. I think that's it was central, and it was actually something that was evolving through the 5 years it took to make the movie.
So you're a complete inversion of Shireen, because she took exactly what's around her and you took exactly what wasn't, but it was.
Right, yeah, that's what I wish I'd said it like that so quickly and so elegantly.